King Charles III has only been on the throne for a short time, but for some would-be wrongdoers, there's been a target on his back for years. The death of Queen Elizabeth has renewed long-standing debate about the British monarchy. While many in Britain and around the world still support the royal family, some have argued that the institution should be dissolved. Over the years, that pushback on the institution of royalty has been both peaceful and violent. According to the Mirror, there were 3 failed assassination attempts on the Queen in her 7 decades on the throne. But before he took the throne himself, King Charles was attacked during a visit to Australia while he was still the Prince of Wales.
Australia Day, traditionally a day of great celebration and remembrance. Instead, 1994 will be remembered as the time Prince Charles's life was threatened.
The attack on Prince Charles happened in Sydney, Australia on Australia Day, January 26th in 1994. The British royal was in the country on tour as a guest of honor, about to hand out highly prestigious Australia Day awards. At the time, though, there was an ongoing refugee crisis in Cambodia, and more than 100 so-called Cambodian boat people, refugees seeking asylum in Australia, were stranded in makeshift boats off the coast, while the Australian government decided how to handle them. Other asylum seekers were detained in prison. On the day that King Charles III was fired at, he had just stepped to the lectern to speak. At that point, a young Cambodian university student named David Kang, who was 23 at that time, emerged from the crowd some 20 feet from where the prince was standing. Kang fired 2 blanks from a starter pistol. Notably, Charles kept his cool as Kang approached the stage, only pausing to adjust his cufflinks. Soon, Kang was taken down by security, including Prince Charles's own bodyguards. Kang was later found guilty of threatening unlawful violence and sentenced to 500 hours of community service. Though it's unlikely that anyone could be killed by a starter pistol, guns of that type can be modified to shoot live ammunition, and it's sometimes also possible to be injured by blanks. Kang later said he was motivated to attack Prince Charles over concerns about the Cambodian refugee crisis. He also later noted that he was living with depression at that time and expected the security team might shoot and kill him during the attack on the future king. Prior to the attack, Kang's advocacy for the Cambodians took the form of hundreds of letters written to high-ranking public officials, including Prince Charles. In one, he expressed his willingness to die for the cause. Though he escaped uninjured, controversy ensued after Prince Charles was attacked, with Buckingham Palace, Scotland Yard, and the New South Wales Police in Australia all pointing the finger at each other over the lapse in security. In response to the incident, some called for Prince Charles to cut his tour of Australia short. The Australian Prime Minister at that time, Paul Keating, expressed his embarrassment over what happened and said that he doubted Kang really intended to kill the prince. He characterized what happened instead as a political demonstration. At the time that Charles was attacked in Sydney, Keating said, "Prince Charles is a good friend of this country and he should be treated with the respect and dignity that a good friend deserves. His control in the circumstances, I think, reflected the professional attitude that he has." By 2005, Kang had turned his life around to become a barrister, a type of lawyer working in Sydney. Speaking to the Sydney Morning Herald, Kang said at the time, "What happened 11 years ago was an extremely traumatic experience, and I have certainly moved on in my life, and now I have become a barrister here in Sydney. To think about it even now unsettles me a little bit. What happened back then was extremely traumatic, and the effect it had on my family was deeply upsetting." Despite how frightening the incident was, history left both the attacker and his would-be target safe. It's as close as you can get to a happy ending.